Simone, how are you?
I'm awesome, Carlo.
That is so good. It's so good to meet you and sit here with you and be in your area, in your space in Melbourne. What have you been up to today? What's been happening?
What have I been up to today? I actually went to meet my accountant today. So, which to me, I love it. It's really exciting. I went with someone that I work with, and she's like, "You are so funny," because I get so excited, looking at tax planning and meetings and how we're going to work everything out financially for all the companies that we have. So I did that. I went shopping. Went to lunch at the Spice Temple, one of my favourite restaurants in Melbourne. Yeah, and then now I'm here with you.
Beautiful. What a way to spend your Friday Valentine's Day.
It is Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day to you too. We haven't met before, and I think I've only seen you on social media through Dane, Dr. Dane here, who was previously on the podcast, and Access. That was my first introduction to all of this. And then I got sent out your book as well, and I'm like, to be on Valentine's Day and, reading this morning, and I'm going, this is very convenient to be talking about this sort of stuff. So for myself, I don't know much about you, and I don't like to do too much research because I like to have this conversation and connection on the podcast. And for the listeners that don't know too much about you, can you give us a wrap up of your life from start to where you are now and everything that you do? And when I say wrap up, it can be 10 minutes. It's like the keynote version of your story.
Okay. Well, I was born and bred in Sydney, Australia. Yeah. So lived in Sydney I went to school in Sydney, went to a private school in Sydney. And then when I was probably about 15, 16, all I wanted to do was travel around the world. Yep. So when everyone was talking about, either getting married or, going to uni, etc., all this sort of stuff, I was like, I want to travel around the world. So when I left high school, I actually got 3 jobs really quickly, and I got 3 jobs because I knew that if I was working so much I wouldn't spend money, and I started to save money, and within 3 months I left to go overseas. Told everyone I was going to go for about 3 months, and I went to America, I went to Europe, and ended up staying for 3 years. Whoa. And had an absolute ball. I traveled to so many different countries, worked in so many different industries, different jobs, met so many amazing awesome people. Came home and everyone sort of looked at me and patted me on the back and went, well, now you've got that out of your system, you can settle down. And I was like, what? And I was like, no, this is just the beginning.
That was round one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it was so interesting to see how many people were like, well, isn't 3 years enough? And I was like, no, I actually really like traveling. That's how I'd like to create my life. So anyway, I had no money, which I swore to myself I wouldn't do that again because I, came home and had no money and had to move back in with my parents, which was not much fun. So I was like, all right, I need to make money. And then I looked at it and went, okay, I need to make some money and create something where I could travel and make money at the same time, because I knew that I had only, it was just the tip of the iceberg for the traveling that I did do. And did it very backpacker style. Like I was, in London, I was living in a 3-bedroom house with 21 people with 1 bathroom at one stage. Whoa. So yeah, did that whole Aussie backpacker thing, which was fun. It was good. I never actually remember waiting for the bathroom, which is surprisingly,
that's very good, yeah,
I know. Anyway, so I started to earn money and create that I could, travel around the world and do different things. So I started a business called Good Vibes for You. And the whole reasoning behind Good Vibes for You was I looked around the world, and with all my travels, because I lived in this house with, 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom in London with 21 people, to get out of that, what I used to do, because I had hardly any money, I would jump on one of those big red buses and I would, go from one end of London to the other. And I would write, like I used to love writing, so I would just write lots of stuff. And there was this one bus trip that I remember traveling from one end to the other. And it didn't matter what area I was going through, whether it was, a wealthy area, a poor area, a Jewish area, Pakistani area, white, black, whatever. It didn't matter what color, race or creed anyone was. Every time I looked out the window, I was like, I don't see happy people. Like, it didn't matter what was going on. So what I demanded of myself was, okay, what could I create that could wake people up, that they could actually choose something different? So I had this concept. I just wanted to go and shake people by the shoulders and say, you know what, there's something more than this. Like, this can't be it. There's got to be something else. So that's when I started this business called Good Vibes for You. And the whole concept of it was, I had T-shirts, I had merchandise, stickers, magnets, like all these different things that had sayings on them that I actually got as I traveled around the world and met different people, and had sayings on them that I perceived would wake people up or create that more vulnerability with each other, because I saw that when people met each other, they would have these barriers up with each other, rather than like, what if you met somebody else and you're like, hey, what's up? Hi, sort of energy. And I remember one of the designs we had, it was, I met this Israeli guy in Nepal, and we were going off to some yoga camp and doing something. And then we came back and we were like, oh, this was horrible. And, talking about it. And he said, you know what? He said, you guys make it so complicated. He went, it's easy. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, if it feels good, it is good. If it feels bad, change it. Mm-hmm. And that was one of my T-shirt designs. So I would pick things up like that. Like, everyone used to say, oh, who designed this? And I was like, the world did. Everyone I meet in my travels, because I hear different things like these whispers, and I would put them into merchandise.
So what was that again? If it feels good.
If it feels good, it is good.
It is good.
Simple.
Yep. And if
it feels bad, change it.
Got it.
And I was like, that's good, So, yeah, from this Israeli guy. So I had Good Vibes for You. And then, like I said.
So that was the merchandise business?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I actually started working with the music industry in Australia as well with Good Vibes for You. The last tour I did, I was on tour with Pete Murray, did all his merchandise.
Wow.
And Missy Higgins. And I had come across Access Consciousness, and I had done some stuff with them and traveled a little bit. And it was interesting because, those pivotal moments in your life where you go, like, I was getting AAA passes everywhere in the music industry. I had reached that. And I thought that's what I wanted, you know. And because I was doing Pete's merchandise, then people started to notice. And this is when he was like number one. So they were like, who are you? What's your company? Do you want to do mine? And there was this moment, I remember in Newcastle actually, where you used to live.
Yes, yeah.
Newcastle. And we had this, we had drinks in Pete's, penthouse apartment after one of the gigs. And everyone was sitting around, and I was sitting in the room looking around going, wow, this is what I thought I wanted. Is it actually what I want? Like, I'm on tour. I'm getting to know people. I'm getting to shake hands with people who are influential in the industry, and I could create what I, wanted, sort of thing. But I was also started going to a few classes around the world with Access Consciousness, and I remember sitting there going, "This is not actually what I want. I want to go on tour with Access, not with this." So I don't know if I made the right choice or whatever, in the sense of I quit that business. And I probably could have kept that and made, money and been successful over here and had this. But to me, I was like, this is not actually what I came here to do on this planet. I always knew that there was something different. So, getting more involved with Access was definitely, the path that I wanted to choose. It matched the energy more of, say, Good Vibes for You, my original, reason for creating that business. So I started like casually working with Access, because me being me, with business, I love business. So I was like, right, you know what, you guys could do this, and you could do this, and you could do this. And Gary Douglas, the founder of Access, was like, you know what, you could come work with us. And I was like, no, I'm too busy. I've got my own business, And he was like, all right, and kept, slowly asking me different questions, and I'd get more and more involved. And then within about a year, I found myself in Houston, Texas, doing a facilitator training. And then not long after that, we were in 4 countries at the time, and Gary said, do you want to be the worldwide coordinator? And I was like, well, what does that mean? It's like,
what does that involve?
Yeah, and we talked about a few different things, and I was like, yeah, because I said, this is not big enough for me. Like, what I'm doing right now is not big enough. I've always desired a much bigger world than most of the people I've ever met. So I was like, all right, let's do this. And now Access Consciousness is in 187 countries, and we have like hundreds of thousands of practitioners around the world, thousands of facilitators, and it's growing. I've been the worldwide coordinator of Access for 18 years, and only just recently did I change that up and made the choice to sort of give that job away to somebody else, because I've stepped up more and doing more of the facilitating and more of the business development side of it. Hence going and hanging out with the accountant today and going through everything, pre-tax planning, which I love. Scary, I know. So I guess that's sort of the short story.
The short of the long.
Today. Yeah.
No, that's so awesome. There's so much to unpack in that. Let's start right back because very similar in terms of as soon as I finished high school, I'm traveling, went overseas, pursued my soccer dream of playing in Europe. Then I lived there for 2 years and I was like, hang on, I came from a small country town where everyone finishes high school, gets married, has kids, settles down, grows grapes or whatever they do.
Grows grapes, I love it in Australia. Yeah.
Like my dad still does it. So he's always like, are you sure? Like you haven't got a relationship yet and you're 25? Like you sure you don't want to join us on the block? And I'm like, no. Like my sister, married at 19, which happily married and kids and all that, which was fine, but it's a kind of a norm. For me, I was like, no, I want to travel. I want to explore. I want to do all this. And my life, I've only just moved back to Melbourne now, but it's like, I'm not going to be here long term. It's always like, going to be
Where did you play
around.
soccer?
In Amsterdam.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was fun for 2 years. And then I, pretty similar in terms of had my realization of this isn't for me.
Yeah.
I like the camaraderie and I found my strengths in it, which was leadership and connection. Mm-hmm. Then from there, it was like first identity crisis, moved into the next thing. And then the next thing, it was like a journey of like network marketing, starting my own businesses. Then it was like, I went back home. As you were saying, like had no money, went back home. And I was like, I connect with people. I love conversations like this. And I'm connected with some really cool people from sport to entrepreneurship, all those things. Why not start a podcast? Then I was like, how can I do this, travel and make money as well? Then it went into speaking, mentoring, all of that. So I like how there's a lot of things that connect in here. When you left though, so when you went and did that round trip, you came back home and everyone was like, oh, you're going to settle down now. What I see a lot of people maybe not even taking that step or having the courage to take that step is that pressure from everyone else. Did you not feel that? Or you still felt it but just went, it's not, I don't want to settle.
Absolutely. I think there's two things that I remember quite clearly is we were at a family gathering and, I overheard my mother saying to someone, oh, Simone will be happy when she finds the one. And I was like, oh my goodness, are you kidding me? I was like, I'm the happiest person I know in our family. And yet to her, what I realized was happiness equals, you've got to get married, you've got to have kids, you've got to have the house, and then you're happy. She couldn't have that my life was so different, like the black sheep of the family, they've always called me, and that I could actually be happy. So I remember that and thinking, God, they don't get me. And my father, who was an absolutely beautiful, amazing, wonderful man, he died probably I think it was about 7 years ago now. And I remember just before he died, he said to me, Simone, I'm really sorry. He said, but your mother doesn't get you. And I was like, it's okay, Dad. And he was like, your brother doesn't either. And I was like, it's okay. And he was like, I'm sorry. And he goes, but I'm here for you. And he so got how different I was and what I wanted to create in the world and with myself. And he was so supportive and empowering. He, even when I, went overseas, and he was like, Simone, you need to live your life. And he was like, I will be here for you, but you need to choose what it is. And I will always be here for you. And I'm so grateful that I had at least one person in my life like that. So no matter what was occurring, it's like I always had that and always kept following what I knew was possible, even though, like you said, no one was supportive of it. And I find it really interesting that when you want to do something that's outside of the box, you want to do something that's a bit different, hardly anyone around you is supportive. And unfortunately, mostly family. Family are like, no, I can't define you now because you've just totally stepped outside of this box that I've, put you in, or this is what you should be doing. And I see a lot of people start to cut themselves off based on the projections that, friends and family have of you, rather than what is it you'd like to choose? Like, this is your life. This is your reality. It's like, what is it you'd like to choose? So I did keep moving forward with that, even though sometimes it felt like I was choosing against a lot of people, even though all I was really doing was choosing for me.
Yep. Which is, the number one at the end of the day.
Yeah. And knowing, really knowing that there was something different that could be created on this planet. And, with Good Vibes for You, the business that I, originally created, like I said, I wanted to invite people to more vulnerability with each other and to have more awareness. Like, sometimes I felt like I was the only person walking around that would notice the trees or notice the sound of the water or notice like the earth. And people would just be like doing their trauma and drama. And I'd be like shaking my head going, really? This is what you're choosing when, what can we create with this planet? Like this planet is freaking amazing. And so many people ignore it. And unfortunately now, like when there's, things that sort of you can't not ignore it, people are taking attention to it now, but not thinking that they can do anything or be anything to make a difference. And to me, every single person can make a difference on this planet. And not like we have to save the planet. The planet doesn't have a judgment. It doesn't have a point of view. And I just knew that there was something different. So I've always kept moving forward with what it is that I desired to choose, even if some people thought it was against them. It hasn't been.
And what about when you then decided to let go of, was it Good Vibes?
Good Vibes for You.
Good Vibes for You. Because like you said, you were at a successful...
I was, yeah.
I guess, peak in that business.
Yeah.
Then for you to go, I'm stopping it, to then follow this that feels right. What was the pressure there? Like, did you feel that? Was there also resistance again of people going, what are you doing? This is a really good thing.
Yeah, I'd say the most feedback that you would get, or the points of view that people had was, oh, look, there she goes again. She can't make up her mind, so she's quitting something. Or there she goes again. She can never settle down, and all of those points of view. And also, my dad was still alive at that time, and he was my accountant. And
that's handy.
Yeah, well, it was, yeah. And Gary Douglas, the founder of Access, was doing a business seminar in San Francisco. And I had created myself to be a little bit of a financial mess at that stage. But I spoke to my dad and I said, I really want to go and do this seminar with this guy, Gary Douglas, in San Francisco. And he said to me, it's probably going to cost you $10,000 to, the class, get there, accommodation, all that sort of stuff. He said, I think you need to go there and figure out if this is actually what you want to do. And again, so friggin' grateful that I had like my father in my life that, my mother would have said, you need to do this and you need to do that, like, and telling me what to do, which I don't know about you, but when someone tells you to do something, the first thing you want to do is not do it, whereas dad was like, you need to go, you need to do this. So I think I've always been a little bit of a lone wolf in that area. Like, if you like it, that's great. But if you don't, it doesn't mean I'm not going to choose it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah. Too well.
Yeah, no, it's lots of times. What are you doing now? And it's like, it's a surprise.
Yeah.
It's a new business or something. Yeah. Like now, they're like, oh, you're moving to Melbourne now. And I'm like, yeah, it's what feels right to me. And if
at
you
this
didn't,
moment,
and if you didn't take that, you said when you were explaining your story, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but it was like, maybe that was a mistake to let it go. Do you really think there was any mistake in that? Like, because it then led you to where you are now, and that's...
No, I not a mistake, but one thing I did learn, and the first book that I ever wrote is called Joy of Business, and one of the...
She also writes books.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the third one, yeah. So, and one thing I did learn is, because at one stage Gary said to me, he went, you do realize that you don't have to, destroy a business in order to start a new one, right? Because he was watching what I was doing and I was like, oh, I wish someone had told me that years ago. Because I had this, what I would create, I'd create this business and it would be successful and then I'd get bored. It was making money, it was doing whatever. So somewhere, like not cognitively, I would start to destroy this business. So I'd go, oh, look, see, this isn't working. I should create something different over here because I love creating. That's one of my favorite things to do. So in saying that, what I get is I could have kept the business running, and had that as well. But at that stage, I was like, get rid of it so I can have this over here, and now I've realized, which I do, I have many different businesses now. Now I realize you can have different businesses. You don't just have to limit yourself to one. Yeah. So, yeah.
Which is very mainstream to be like one thing.
Yeah, I know.
Which I do see the focus, but similar. I've always done lots of things and that's always worked really well for me because they all work together.
Yeah,
so.
And that's just limiting yourself to thinking that there's no one that can show up that can contribute to your business. That's even greater than what you can.
And that goes to the first chapter of this book that I was reading. And again, I was like, which one's the most interesting one that I want to read? And it's like, I expect to be single forever. And there was a part in that where it's like, when you say that, you limit to everything.
Yeah.
You're not open to those opportunities, to meeting people, to starting a new business and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you want me to talk about that?
Yeah, we can get later. I reckon
Okay.
there's a few more things I want to delve into there. What is success to you?
To me personally, it's changing people's lives. Like I have a great story that's actually in the book Joy Business. I had this lady ring me once, and she rang me and she said, are you the founder of Good Vibes for You? And I said, yes. And she said, you know what? I've been trying to find you. I want to thank you. She said, you changed my entire life. And I said, tell me more. And she said, I've been married for, I think it was like 10 years or something. And she had like 8 or 9 kids, just pumping the kids out.
Good effort.
Yeah. But her husband was beating up on her pretty much for the past 8 or 9 years. And she said, every day I wake up and I've been crying and my life has been a mess. And she said, someone gave me one of your magnets and I've had it on my fridge. And it was the magnet that said, imagine what you would do if you knew you couldn't fail. And she said, I want to tell you that someone gave me that magnet and for the last 6 months I've read it. And she said, I want you to know, it almost makes me cry every time I talk about it. She said, I want you to know that I've left my husband and I've got a house and I've got my kids. She went, and I'm waking up and I'm happy. And I was like, that is a success. Now that magnet would have cost $5. I probably wholesaled it, so I probably sold it for $2.50, and the gross profit I made on it wouldn't have been much. But to me, that whole business was a success based on that one lady. So to me, that's what I look at with success. And I see so many people try and calibrate if they're successful based on the money they have in their bank account. That's not success. That's just fun to have money in your bank account, It's like, but that's not how I measure success at all.
That's really interesting, and I like that story. I like the whole how you made merch that inspires people. It's something that I've also dabbled in a little bit, not on a business sense, but everything that I did, like for example, my Christmas present 2 years ago was mugs that said grateful AF, and then on the back of it had like 20, 30 things to be grateful for, and my name was in there. So when someone's drinking their coffee,
I like that.
They could when people are like, I can't find things to be grateful for, they'd look at it and go, well, there's that many things.
Yeah.
And it was everything. It was like water, my heart, being able to walk, like stuff like that, those things. And then recently, so on the weekend, so I'm on a meditation and mindfulness app called Bloom, and I was the MC and the host for the day. And I was like, I'm up the front for the whole day for 8 hours. I need something that's going to instill into people. My words are going to do it, but I know that people are also visual. And I was like, I want to get printed on my shirt something. What's going to stand out and stick with people. And I love my affirmations. My Instagram, I've got every second post is a quote because I love that stuff. And I was like, what affirmation would really help these people? And the people that were going to be there are at a point where they're struggling with their mental health and they're looking for this app and this event to improve on it, to be surrounded by the right people. But what I've seen in that community is like, they get so caught up on being, I shouldn't be like this. Right. I should be in this place. I should be married with kids. I should be this job. I should be happy, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, the quote is an affirmation that I love is, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Yeah. And I got that printed, and as soon as I got there, they're like, yeah. And like people were saying it throughout the day, and like one of my things was like after the speakers, I was like, I'd say the 3 affirmations of the event to just drill it into their mind. Because every time they've seen me, they're going to see it. Yeah. And I said at the start, come take a photo with me, put it on your story, because every time someone sees your story, they're going to read it and say, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Yeah. Not me, Carlo. Yeah. They're going to read it, and subconsciously, it's going to put it in their head. Yeah. So people were doing that, and I had my like David Beckham moment where I'm like, yeah, like people taking a photo with me, like this is cool. And I loved it. But then, I get these posts like yesterday and the day before where people are messaging me and saying like, that quote has stood out to me for the past 4 days. Yeah. Just reminding myself that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Yeah. So that similarity, like I love how, we can connect on that as well. But that's something like just a T-shirt, like writing on a T-shirt or a magnet, how that can impact people.
There was, years ago, I was doing a Mind, Body and Spirit Festival in Sydney, and it was a Sunday afternoon, and it was really, really busy. And I had one of my T-shirts on, and it said, be open to the moments of life, do not be afraid, which I also got from another Israeli guy, actually, that, nice. we met up with in Nepal. And I'm walking down the corridor of the Mind, Body and Spirit Festival. And like I said, there's people everywhere. And I'm walking down and I see this guy who's walking towards me, and he just glances down and he reads the T-shirt. And there was this nanosecond where he looks up and we just like direct eye contact, and I could just see he was like, yeah. And I was like, yes, this works. Be open to the moments of life. Do not be afraid. So that's that exact thing. Like, same thing. I was like, come on, guys, let's go. Wake up. Like, what else is possible? What else have we got here? Yeah, love it.
I'm thinking with my business partners, we're like, what about some like our gym stuff? Because we've got our own merch for like our business and movement and collective. But I'm like, what about having something on the back? Because everyone, like, you see the backs of people when they're working out. What if it said something nice like, that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, or I love who I am right now, or something like that. Like I love that, because when I notice people with it, I go, they get it. They know what's happening. That, which is so awesome.
You don't have to go to the wrongness of you. You're not wrong.
Yeah, no.
Like,
Yes.
Yes. There's far more greater, about you than what you've been willing to acknowledge. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say you're living your purpose?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And, one of the things that Gary Douglas, the founder of Access, said to me.
I need to meet Gary.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. He's awesome. Years and years and years ago, he said, what if the purpose of life was to have fun? And I was like, are you kidding me? Do you know how many times I've sat down with people and tried to figure out what the purpose of life is and what I'm supposed to do and who I'm supposed to help and, all this sort of stuff. And the simplicity of that felt so like, that's not correct. Like, I can't possibly just have them be that. And over the years, I've definitely delved into it and explored that of like, what if the purpose of life was to have fun? And it doesn't mean it's like this, fun factor over here that you're ignoring everything else. It's inclusive. Yeah. And it's like, but what if you have the, adventure of living? Like, the post that you saw on my Instagram on the Harley Davidson last night, the amount of people who have pinged me about that is incredible. But it's like, but the joy is there. It's real. Yeah. And I get that joy and that expression of happiness and joy that we be and actually being it. That's also, better than a T-shirt, because other people are just going, whoa, okay, hang on a second. Can I have some of that too? Yeah, you can. You got to choose it. Yeah. So yes. I would say yes, absolutely.
I love that. How do we then, as the people that are listening to this, the leaders out there, how can they then inspire that in others? Is it just like you just said, just being that and letting that be that thing, or is it a more structured approach, or is it as simple as have more fun and do the things that you want to do, and that will then inspire people? Well,
I mean, you've met Dr. Dane here, and you wrote the book Be You, Change the World, and I think that's a brilliant start for people to have a look at it, because I see most of the time people wake up in the morning with this litany of judgments that they have of themselves, whether it's I don't know, their business, their money, their bodies, their relationship, whatever it is, that they have this litany of judgment. And what if you didn't wake up with that? And I get that's easy for me to say, and then just choosing it might not be as easy. And so hence, working with Access Consciousness and the weird and wacky stuff that we do and the tools and the processes I get allow people to know that they're not wrong and that they have a different choice in life. And so to me, I think you have to work at it as well. It's not, could you wake up and just choose happy? Absolutely. Do we? Not all the time. So then what would make that easier for you? Yeah. So, yeah. And one of the things that we talk about all the time is living in the question, like being in question. Like, what if you didn't go to a conclusion or create the limitations of you? What if you actually ask questions of like, okay, so what else is possible here that I've not yet asked for? Like, there's so much that's available, and we have this focused energy of limiting it rather than knowing that there's a godzillion possibilities available. So what are you going to choose? What are you going to choose today?
And I love the one from Dr. Dane here from our episode where it was like, how can it get any better?
How does it get any better than this?
How does it get any better than this?
Yeah.
Which was powerful because, people are always like, what's the bad thing? What's going to happen next is going to stop me. But then when you open that possibility, it's,
Yeah, or people get something that is, the main thing I see is they have something show up in their life that they didn't think that they deserved, know? And it's like, no, you do. You deserve everything. And then they go, oh, it doesn't get any better than this. No, it does.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep asking the question, how does it get any better than this? It's like there is so much more that is possible, but you've got to choose it, you've got to create it, you've got to ask for it.
I want to go very deep on this question.
Mm-hmm.
I just heard another way of saying it, so I might say that afterwards, but how I normally ask it is, what is the worst thing that's ever happened to you or experienced in life, and how is that the best thing that ever happened to you?
Wow. That's a good question. That's a good question. And I think I'm blushing. There's two things that I can think of. And it's interesting. I've never, ever spoken about one of these things.
This is exclusive content.
Yeah, it is. And okay. So when I was 17, I was raped, and I went to the wrongness of me. I thought it was my fault for years and years and years. And it wasn't until many years later when I met Gary and Dane, and I know that I had just gone and like blocked that out. And then I actually...
Blocked out, held on to.
I just thought it was my fault.
Okay. Yeah.
Just thought it was my fault, you know, and so just went, I'll just like put that over there, like, and not deal with it, sort of thing. And then years and years later, when I had met Gary and Dane, and I started to look at it, and I was like, that wasn't my fault. That was, you know, and what I get from that though too is the level of abuse that I have had so many people talk to me about in very many different formats of abuse, and being able to talk to them about that and not become a victim of it, because I see so many people become a victim of it, and it's not. I know I changed that guy's life. I'm pretty sure he never did that again. And I know that, you know, I don't know, like the willingness to have that occur, not go to the wrongness of me, and yet I know that I changed this guy's life. Like I know that maybe he would have done that again, etc. or whatever. And I just know that it changed something for him. Mm-hmm. And interesting enough, it's like, I think when you have like physical or sexual abuse like that, it's sometimes easier to deal with than other forms of abuse, which is more like gaslighting, and when someone's just continuously, you know, digging at you, because this one you can deal with. This is physical, sexual. It's like, okay, this happened like this. So
it happens,
you know,
hopefully once, and then.
Yeah.
Boom.
But this one, it's like, this is like constant. So it allowed me to actually acknowledge the abuse that does exist, unfortunately, and that it doesn't mean that you're less than. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. It's never your fault, and you're not a victim. And what I've found is so many people that I've worked with is they're quite often these hugely strong people who, like a really good friend of mine I know was abused as a child by her grandfather and her stepdad. And what she also realized was she was sort of, what she was creating, it's such a big topic. What she was creating was, she knew that her sister couldn't handle it, sort of thing. So, and it's like, and I've seen that, I mean, Dane had huge amounts of abuse, and most people use it as this justification for not having something greater in their life, or for being bitter, etc. And it doesn't have to be like that. Yeah. It's like there's a different path that you can walk upon and choose that is not based on any sort of abuse that you have received. It's not personal. Abuse is not personal. And I know that it is a really big topic. Yeah. So when you asked me that question too, there was two things that popped for me, and that was really the first one. And usually I find when I am talking to people, if something pops, I will talk about it, but I have not spoken about that, because usually when someone's listening, I get that it's it contributes to them in some way. Yeah. So, because the other thing I would say that...
Thank you for sharing, by the way.
You're welcome.
How is that the best thing?
Because I got to learn more about abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that it's not personal, and you're not the victim.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing for people to get, and you're not.
Mm-hmm.
You're not. So, yeah. And like I said, it's a really big topic. So, you know, and the second thing that I would say that pops too is I took a lot of drugs. Like I did a lot of drugs for a lot of years. And I get at the time when I was doing a lot of drugs living in Sydney, you know, like I said to you before, I used to walk around going, this can't be it. Like, you know, these people just like, like these mundane sort of, you know, choices. So for me, taking drugs was the closest I got to the reality that I knew must exist, you know. So I did take a lot of drugs. And I remember the day I turned 30, I was like, hang on a second. I'm like, you know, I'm smoking, I'm drinking, I'm smoking pot, I'm taking chemicals. Like I was doing everything possible. And I turned 30 and went, you've got to give up something, Simone. So I gave up cigarettes was my first thing I did. But I get that taking drugs and for so long and in such a huge capacity, like I was dealing in Sydney and everything. It's like how I started my business, you know, good joy business. That's, you know,
the entrepreneurial start.
Yeah, I know, good Aussie business. You know, I think I used to say a lot of good businesses started dealing drugs. So, but the thing that I get is I have no place to judge anyone.
Yeah.
I know, like, especially, you know, my job now, it's like traveling around the world doing seminars to empower people that they know and you know, working with them on things that they've decided that they have a problem with. It's like, I really have no place to judge anyone. I've been there, done it, and I have no regrets at all. And I'm really grateful that I am here where I am today and what I've chosen and what I'm choosing now. So, yeah.
Yeah. Two, like, deep things, but it's also like the perspective you gain. That's why I asked the question, because it's always like, and what I do with my mentor group and people that come into my collective, it's like, find those things. Yeah, I'm not saying they're good, but how was that the best thing that ever happened? Because then when you gain that perspective, you go, well, how can I then use that for myself, but then for other people like yourself? You can now relate to those people that come into your programs and people that you meet and have empathy. Yeah. But then also, okay, I know how you feel. Here's, you know, maybe something that can help you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was a friend of mine who, she wrote this book called Learning to Grieve, and she went into Brisbane prison and asked if she could, you know, give the book into the Brisbane prison, etc. And just happened to be talking to the right person. And she ended up going into this prison, and every Wednesday for, I think it was about 2 years, she would go in there and teach the guys, and they were like hardened criminals, go in there and teach the guys bars, which is one of the hands-on processes that we have in Access, and go in there. And the lady said it was so cute. Like, some of these guys were in there for life, and every Wednesday they'd wash their hair because, you know, Wendy was coming in to teach them bars and have that. And there's this one guy I know that he said, you know what, now I know what I want to do when I get out of prison. I want to be a bars facilitator. And I was like, that's cool. But I look quite often, you know, at one stage I was like, hey, should I go in there? And we gave some of the Joy business books that I wrote in there, because to me I was like, the only difference between me and them is I never got caught with what I was doing too. You know, I was Joy business. I was like, hey, I like to take drugs, so I don't like that it cost me money. And I remember a friend of mine hocked his sunglasses once, and I was like, that's not supposed to happen. You're not supposed to do, like, that's really, you know, you're not supposed to do that. And I was like, we can work this out. So I worked out, I even got these investors, and I was like, right, if we buy this amount, and then we can do this, and, you know, Joy business, worked out how we could create something from this so that I can have drugs, take them, but I can sell them, and I can create a business, and I can do all this, and made it move to work for me. So, and I mean, I had no judgment of it, and I still don't. And I stopped when I knew that you know, enough. I've done this, enough.
So if you ever want to start a business, Simone's just told you how to do
I've
it
got
by
the
dealing drugs. Real conscious podcast here. Fantastic.
But, you know, I mean, so many people have been there, done that. And what if the conscious podcast, and what if, like, to me, consciousness is having no judgment of anything and nothing of what you've done, ever. Ever, 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 ever. Don't judge you. Don't judge anyone else.
Yeah, if that's that's what you needed to do and was the best thing at the time, then sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I love it. What has been your greatest failure?
Oh, I'm going to say, am I allowed to say nothing? Because I really don't look at, like, one of the things that, like, that saying that that I told you about, that lady when she had with the magnet, imagine what you do if you knew you couldn't fail. I had my whole high school, like every year when I got my, pencil case, every year I wrote on my pencil case, imagine what you'd do if you knew you couldn't fail. I found that somewhere like years and years ago. And every year that was how I supported me. I kept writing that so I could look at that every day because I always had that point of view. No one ever asked me a question about it, but I always had that point of view that that it just doesn't show up the way you think it's going to. Like, you think it's going to look like this and it shows up a different way, but what if it wasn't failure? What if it was just, it looked different? So I always have had that point of view that it's not necessarily about failing. It's about something showing up and looking entirely different. So I didn't have something with that.
Okay. Greatest mistake?
Greatest mistake. It's going to make me cry. Not asking my dad enough questions before he died. He was an amazing man and he lived an amazing life. He escaped during World War II from Lithuania, and he had some amazing stories that, I know a lot of, and I could have had more. I think if you've got someone that you love that much and you're that close to, ask them as many questions as you can. Yeah.
You're hitting me now.
Are we going to cry together?
We can do that.
Yeah.
Similar, like my grandparents on one side are still alive, and it's like they haven't got long, and it's now that I don't live there. But when I was there, I was asking questions, and
Yeah, go hang out with them. You're a good interviewer.
Yeah.
Ask them more questions.
I'll get them on the podcast. It might be in Italian, and I won't understand it, but that's fine. We get subtitles on everything. Yeah. Okay, that's powerful. Talk to the people that you love.
Yeah.
Ask questions.
Yeah.
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 How can people find their purpose?
Stop trying to look at other people's choices and make them yours. I think you need to, however you do that, however works for you. Like, it could be going for a run, it could be meditating, it could be, swimming, or just whatever. Stop the noise of everything else going around so that you can have a moment for you. You don't have to tell anyone. Like, this is not about announcing it to the world. You can if you desire. But sit down and just start looking at what is it that you would like to have for you as your reality, and what is it you'd like to, I'm going to say, create in the world. Because you, as a single infinite being, can create so much change in the world. There's so many potent, powerful people who have done that, and you got to get that you are one of them, and start to look at, like I would always ask, if I was choosing my reality today, what would I choose? Not based on anybody else, based on you.
I love that. How can people find more fulfillment then?
I would say it's sort of like the second phase, sort of along that same line. 'Cause if you do what is fun for you, it's like then, more things show up. Like if you're trying to get it right, it's not going to create that fun factor or that ease or that joy. It's like if you're willing to get everything wrong, and not from failure, but it's like if you're willing to get everything wrong and just be like, and learn. You know what? Yeah, it's just like, okay, so what next? What next? Then, I don't know. I really like snow skiing, and when you say that, I can see when you're at the top of the mountain and you can see your track and where you're going to go, and it's like, but you've got to be able to change in a nanosecond, like, because you don't know who's coming along, or, the terrain or something like that. And that ability to change things instantaneously, just because you chose something, it doesn't mean that you have to stick to it. You might choose something and go, okay, that didn't work out, or that wasn't much fun, so let's move on. So let's do something different. And the willingness to change your choice whenever you desire. No matter who is saying what around you. And like I said before, it's usually your family sort of going, you just can't settle down, can you? You just can't stick to one thing. And it's like, no, why would I want to stick to one thing? It's like boring. So, and for some people that works, and that's totally okay. Totally fine. But do it because it works for you, not because that's what other people have said that you should be doing.
Is this going into the cows and horses?
Oh,
discussion?
The humans and humanoids. Yeah, sure.
I love that. That had really good feedback as well in that video.
Yeah.
What advice would you give your 16-year-old self?
oh, loosen up, for God's sake, stop judging yourself. I was definitely, trying to get it right. And I was at school, and I went to an all-girls school, all private school, and I was in that popular group, and there was a whole bunch of us that hung out, and some of us were present with each other, but most of all, it was just like trying to prove something.
Yeah.
And I even remember at one stage, I went back to a term of school, and everyone was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I just want to hang on my own." And then I went and hung on my own for a while, and then I hung out with one other person because I was like, none of this made sense to me. Mm-hmm. So I would say loosen up. Don't judge yourself. Mm-hmm. And it's like, choose what works for you. Don't choose based on what other 16-year-olds are choosing. And, it's really hard to say that because I have a 14-year-old stepson at the moment, and he's doing that thing of looking at me like, oh my God, what do you know? You know nothing. And I'm like, I remember those days looking at adults going, oh my God, they know nothing. They're so stupid. And it's like, all right. So, yeah. Hormones.
Yes. I love it. So then how did you then transition into all this stuff like relationships and that area? Because it's not your sole focus, but at the moment, and especially a lot of things that you do is on relationships.
The book that you are holding in your hand, Relationship, Are You Sure You Want One, is written by Brandon Watt and myself, who's my ex-partner. And basically, we lived together we're in a relationship for 8 years. And a lot of people used to, watch us because we would travel around the world. Yep. And I was doing seminars then, and also worldwide coordinator of access. So a lot of people knew me, and they were like, how do you guys create your relationship? Because you get on so well. We still haven't had a fight. My mother used to say we were weird because we don't fight. And I'm like, why would you want to fight with someone? I don't get that, You might think something, I think something, but it doesn't mean either is right or wrong. Let's just move on. So a lot of people used to ask us about our relationship. So we ended up doing some classes on it, and then we started to put this into a book. So we did put it into a book. And then as the book was being released, we actually broke the relationship up. So changed it up, which I think our PR agent was...
Is a publicity stunt? Or
no, I know. That's what we were actually in America at the time, and we were on a lot of TV in America, and that's what they kept going, so did you do this just for... And we were like, no. Yeah. And they were like, do you hate each other now? And trying to put this wedge between us, and we were like, no, we don't. We actually really like each other. We get on well. We just realized the relationship was done. Mm-hmm. We'd done what we were meant to do together. And to me, that's one of the most valuable things I think you can get with relationship is, people go, oh, they've got a great relationship. It's been 42 years. What makes 42 years a great relationship? A great relationship can last 1 month or 1 year, and it can last 42 years. But I see so many people stay in a relationship because it's gone on that long, rather than what if you did look at each other and go, you know what? Are we good? Yeah. Are we done? Do you want to go again, or do you want to call it quits? What else is possible? I don't know, I always say I don't think we're meant to be penguins. I don't think we're meant to mate for life. So, and some people do, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yep. But if you're in a relationship that you're not waking up and enjoying your partner, then what are you doing it for? It's okay to be single. And I love that it's Valentine's Day today. It's it's not right to be in a relationship, and it's not wrong to not be in one. And I'd really like people out there to get that and have that freedom that they get to choose relationship. It's not a necessity.
One of my favourite songs is Depth Over Distance by Ben Howard. And I think that was one thing that made me realise that was going in anything in life. So even if it's a relationship, depth over distance. Instead of focusing on this has to last 10 years, what if it's a shit 10 years?
Yeah.
What about, like you said, if it's a year... and it's deep and it's good and there's connection.
It's fun, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And we can't predict that it's going to last 1 year or 50 years, but at least go all in and have an amazing one while you can. Same with business. I do jump a bit because I have different passions and things come up and I go, this is, like you said, even with the relationship, this has served me. Now I'm on to this. Depth. I went all in and I created what I could. But it wasn't I'm married to this and I have to keep it. And I see a lot of my friends and other people in their careers, I have to stay in this because similar to a relationship, it's what I've always done. Aren't you supposed to stay in this one thing for the rest of your life?
no,
something else
don't
comes
make
up.
me.
Shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then people look at you though, and they start to go, "Oh, he can't settle down. See, he can't make up his mind."
Look, I got this talk on my birthday last year from my dad, and he's like, "When I was your
Son.
age, I was married, I had a house, and I had you and your sister." And I'm like, "Yeah, cool, but I'm doing what I love. I'm traveling. I've got freedom. I'm happy." Like,
yeah. I know. But the thing is, it's interesting too, I see, because when people, have that projection, or they, it's like, are they judging or projecting you, or are they also looking at what they haven't chosen? And it's like, you start to freak them out when you choose so out of the box that they're like, no, it's like, come back. And, which I guess that's what you've always been. And I know that's what I've always been too. Yeah.
And I can understand from their point of view. I had this conversation with my mum, and she's just like, I don't know what you're going into, therefore I can't help you.
Mm-hmm.
I can support you, but normally in like going to school and get a job, I can show you the way because I've done that. But what you're doing, I've never done that. I've never done what you've done, all these things. Yeah. I feel helpless, and it's like, it's okay. I'll figure it out.
I got this. Yeah.
You can't keep me on a leash for
like
exactly. A lot of people do.
Yeah.
So I was reading. Okay, so the first chapter is I expected to be single forever, and in here, I'm not going to go through all of it because it's a long. It's actually it's a really easy read. I don't read, so for me to read a chapter was really good. I listen to books.
Yeah.
And
we went to do this on audio, and we started reading it, and I read my part, and then Brennan started reading, and he just started bawling, and then I started bawling because we went, we need to do the audio at a later date, because it is really vulnerable, the book, and we tell a lot of stories about each other and how much we care about each other, and because we had just broken up the relationship too, so we were like, all right, we'll do the audio at a later date, so it's coming when we don't cry.
Amazing. So by the time you release that, I'll probably have finished the book.
Okay.
So I'll go through the chapters, and then you can kind of sum up the whole book. So I expected to be single forever. It's not your child's job to make you happy. Today is what counts. Creation of a future in the now. Creating a connection. Who is paying? I used to hate money. Can I have money now? Sex for the fun of it. I am single. Is that wrong? That's a big one for Valentine's Day. Intimacy, the key of allowance, living in gratitude. Do you trust me? Sexy time. Sharing is not caring. What if different possibilities are available? Are we done yet? And now we begin. Gender translator, and then about you and about Brendan, and that's another one on there. So yeah, what's this book about?
Wow, I mean those I love. Thank you for reading those chapters out too.
You're welcome.
Because I forget, but there's so much in that. I mean, okay, so I'd say the brief discussion of that would be that relationship. I mean, the whole name of the book, Relationship, Are You Sure You Want One? Relationship should be a question.
So it's for both, whether you're single or in a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got some great tools in that book if you actually want to create a good relationship.
Yep.
And you'll probably hate them. And can I say, if you read it and there's a tool in there that you resist, it's usually the one that's going to help you the most and change the most. So, but we cover things in there from like money in a relationship. I mean, people think that there's this, the right way to be with money. No, it's like two different people, different relationship, what works for you. So, I mean, we talk about that. God, we talk about our sex lives. We spoke about everything in that book. I mean, there was a guy in India, he said to us, I can't even talk to my wife like this. And you guys put it into a book. Like, yeah, because we really desired to be that vulnerable, that hopefully people would get something out of it and, and have that ability to change. We do talk a lot about, I guess, the difference between men and women and how they function. Like one of the things, I talk about is, man cave is a real thing. It's like, when men require space, it's like they require space, and women tend to do this thing of going, oh my God, it's me, I'm wrong, what did I do?
Why doesn't he want to spend 100% of his time with
you?
Exactly.
And one of the stories we tell, and if Brendan was having this moment where he needed space, I'd tap in and be like, hey, you good? Can I help you with anything? And be like, no, I'm good. All right, I'm here if you need me. And then just leave him alone. Like most guys want to play video games or watch TV, or there was a spot that Brendan would sit in the house, and that wasn't a spot that meant come sit with me, I knew that when he was sitting there, he used to smoke cigarettes at that time and he doesn't now, but he'd go have a cigarette and it was like, I'm having this space for me. And it's like, we even had a man cave in our house for a while and it was like, I don't need to go there, you go there. And allowing the other person to do what it is that they desire. Like most women like to share. And it's like a man doesn't really like sharing that much. He's like if you want to share, get a girlfriend, you know. And it's like there is a difference between men and women. And if you acknowledge that and you don't try and, you know, bridge that gap, it's just go, wow, this guy is awesome or this girl's awesome, and be with that, then I think you can create something really different in a relationship. And one of the things we do talk about is the 3 things that you require to create a conscious relationship is one, that...
Thank you for using the word conscious relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, because I spoke about drugs before. I better put the word conscious in there. No.
This is a conscious podcast. Yeah.
Exactly. One is that they're good in bed. Mm-hmm. Hello. 2 is...
You can have a relationship, but it won't be very fun. Yeah.
No, exactly. 2, that they let you do whatever the hell you want and you let them do whatever the hell they want. Right? Mm-hmm. Don't try and control them. Don't try and own them. And number 3 is that they're a contribution financially. So, and that doesn't necessarily mean this joint bank account that you're doing this. Like at one stage, you know, I was the one that was earning the most money. And so I was working away and, you know, but Brendan was the one looking after the house and he's an amazing cook. So, you know, he would be cooking dinner and I'd be sitting there with my computer and a glass of wine or something and, you know, working, and I'd be creating, but he would be contributing to our lives. And then we also did things like renovations, and he would, you know, handle all of that, etc. So as long as there's 2 people contributing to each other in some sort of way, I get it works.
Is that knowing your roles?
No, I think you need, well, yes and no. At that moment, yes, we did, and allow it to change. Mm-hmm. Like Brendan at one stage was top 100 MasterChef in Australia, so he's a good cook.
What?
Yeah.
Cool.
And then he just stopped cooking. It was like, all right, I got that while he was, and now it's like, you know, I don't think you'd get him cooking. So it doesn't mean that just because you did something at you know, this year or this week that you have to do that next week or next year. I think you need to allow people to change, and that's a really key thing too in a relationship. Allow them to choose what it is they want to choose. Like at one stage, I remember talking to Brendan saying, hey, because I traveled a lot, I think I want to go live in Europe for a while. I mean, he had a son, and so it was my stepson, and he, you know, so it was a little bit harder for us all to pack up and leave. And he said, okay, that's cool. Will you still contribute to the mortgage? And I'm like, of course. And I was like, you guys can come over on holidays, or like we looked at what we could choose to create it. It didn't mean that we had to split up. It didn't mean anything. It was like, what do you want to do? What do I want to do? You choose for you, I choose for me. And most of the time it ended up being that it was this contribution with each other, and we chose to be together. Yeah. And then after 8 years, it was like, okay, maybe let's change it up. And we're both having a great time. It's been like over a year, and we're both having, you know, a lot of fun, and it's good. And he's definitely one of my best mates.
Amazing. It's something that comes up a lot in whether it's people that I work with one-on-one or in the groups or at events, and I'm like, you know, I'm the single guy that gives all the relationship advice. You know, single for 6 years, but, you know, I give the relationship advice because I understand values and having your own, not bending yours to them. Yeah. I've done that. Doesn't work.
No.
But coming together and having mutual values as well, but respecting theirs as well, and being like you said, having your things that you do. Yeah. And that's okay. And not going, you have to change that for me, or I have to change for you. I just feel like that's always going to end in like disappointment and like just a toxic relationship that's not going to be fun.
Well, it's sort of, you know, I mean, all those Hollywood movies that's like, you know, you complete me, or you're my other half, or all that sort of stuff. It's like, you know, it sort of puts into that you're becoming one person. It's 2 people becoming one person. It's like, no, you're a person, I'm a person. What do you want to do? What do I want to do? And like every day, you know, I guess we would wake up and just go, okay, I choose you. It's like, you know, you did. And it's like, I think when you try and control someone or own someone, it's the quickest way to push them away as well. Mm-hmm. It's like, you know, needy never usually leads to something great. Mm-hmm. So to me, I mean, one of the things that we talk about is, the word relationship, the definition of relationship literally means the distance between two things. And that's what we create, relationship, the distance between two things. So for me, if you're going to be in a relationship, you should be with someone who you are going to create at least 20 times more together than what you would alone. So we nicknamed it and said, what if you had a creationship instead of a relationship?
I like it.
Is that good for Conscious Podcast?
I really like that. Watch me make a quote out of that.
Okay.
I'll tag you in it. That's really cool. One of the questions, I actually put it on Instagram today and I was like, is there any questions about relationships? There was heaps. So the one that really stood out to me and one that I get asked a lot that I'm kind of not sure how to answer, but because there's so many ways that I could, but I'd love your perspective on, is what if one person in the relationship is growing? Maybe they're on a personal development journey. They're moving more into their purpose and passion. It probably wasn't what it was before, but they're still with that same person. One's growing and one isn't. Yeah.
Okay.
They're going, what do we do?
Yeah.
Because obviously they love that person.
Yeah.
And they don't want to leave them.
Yeah.
But then they feel like there's going to be a distance. They won't understand me. And then I've had situations where people are like, they then say, well, you've outgrown me. So what's the point of this?
The key thing is allowance. Is being an allowance of what the other person is choosing and what they're not choosing, as the case may be. Yeah. And I mean, one of the things that we refer to as well is, like when people go, oh, I'm in love with this person, okay? And it's like, most of the time what occurs is someone goes, oh, I love this person, and LOVE, what if that was lower oscillating vibrational equivalent? So then people start to go, oh, I'm in love with them. So that they'll like this lower oscillating vibrational equivalent. So now we are the same, rather than what we would talk about, and we talk about a lot in this book too, is what if instead of loving someone like that, because if I say I love you and you say you love me back, there's all these different meanings that go with you. Like, what does that mean? It's like, I just met him. Like, it's like, he's been single for 6 years. It's like all these different things go on, rather than if you went, hey, I'm really grateful for you. Gratitude has no judgment. Love usually comes with judgment and a hell of a lot of meaning, whereas gratitude has no judgment. So if you are grateful for the person in your life as they are, do not expect or project that they change. And I see that's what ruins a lot of relationships, is when, yes, you might be choosing something, that is expanding your life more, and your world may be way bigger than somebody else's, and they're choosing something smaller, but that doesn't mean it's wrong, or it doesn't mean that they won't choose something greater. But if you project at them that they have to choose something greater, then usually what they do is they'll start to reject you, and it creates this separation, rather than like, hey, what are you up to today? I'm going to go do all this. And that also goes into that, number 2 of the conscious relationship of, letting that person do whatever the hell they want, and you let them, and they let you do whatever you want. Yeah. So it's like being an allowance of each other for whatever it is you're choosing, I think is a really key element to creating that, awesome, great conscious relationship. Yeah.
And I think it's like the whole overarching thing is like, you get to choose to be with that person. And if you choose, then have that allowance as well to let it happen. And if you're not choosing, if you're choosing to be together but no allowance, there's always going to be that resistance and butting heads. So
yeah. Well, then you're going to judgment too. If you're going, hey, I'm choosing this, this growth over here, and you're not, then you've just judged that person. And it's like, let them do whatever the hell they want. Whatever that is. I mean, at one stage I remember, really early on in our relationship, Brennan had moved in with me, and he was a tradesman. He was a tiler by trade and hated it. Hated it. And I said, hey, look, I'm earning enough money. Why don't you not work for a while? Figure out what you want to do. Give yourself some space. So he did. And at one stage, I'm a really good morning person, and I'd wake up in the morning and be like, and create. And after, he was just like hanging on the couch and not doing much, and, being all sad and depressed and mopey. And after 3 days, he looked at me one afternoon and he went, will you stop being so happy? And I looked at him and I went, no. And he said, do you know how hard it is to live with someone who's so happy all the time? And I was like, really? And then we both sort of cracked up laughing. But it I wasn't buying into what he was choosing as his reality. And he was, he was resisting mine. But then when he realized how insane that sounded, he was like, okay, I got to change something here, So, but I was in allowance of him. And it doesn't mean that, in a month's time, if he was still, lying on the couch doing nothing, that I would stay with him. It's like, that's my choice. That's his choice. But for those 3 days, I was like, yeah, dude, whatever. If that's what you need to do right now, do it.
Allowance.
Allowance.
Awesome.
Allowance is the key.
What is consciousness to you? What does it mean to be conscious? Sorry.
Oh, I'm going to say conscious is something that's ever expanding as well. It's like I don't get that there's this place where you go, I am now conscious, because I think it changes all the time. But consciousness includes everything and judges nothing. It's, one of the first things I ever heard Gary Douglas talk about was no judgment. And I was like, what? I was like, a planet with no judgment? How cool would that be? We'd be like nature, because nature doesn't judge each other, The birds don't wake up in the morning and be like, hey, I sound better than you. Or don't sing. It's like, you're tone deaf. Or,
my feathers are better than yours.
Yeah, look at this color. They don't do that. They just contribute to each other. And it so matched the energy of what I was, attempting to create with good vibes. So to me, I was like, what would it be like with no judgment? So to me, consciousness is something that's forever expanding, and it's the willingness to be really present with everything around you and not judge and ask for more awareness every day, being the question, because it's not about getting it right, ever.
I love that. How can people find you, connect with you, get your books, see your content and value that you put out there?
I have a website, SimoneMilasas.com, which is MILASAS.com, and also on accessconsciousness.com. And with the book, Relationship, Are You Sure You Want One? It's, you can go to that too, Relationship, Are You Sure You Want One.com. Instagram, Simone Milasas. See me on the Harley yesterday.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But if you go to any of those places, it'll start to, spread you around to everywhere that I am.
Amazing. And I'll tag Simone and everything, so you can go to the Conscious Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and everything will be tagged in there. I want to wrap this whole conversation up by saying, well, thank you so much for your time, your energy, but also sharing some stuff that was really deep. So being so raw and vulnerable with me, like we've just met,
You're
but
welcome.
I feel such a strong connection. So I am grateful for you.
Thank you so much.
And grateful to spend this time with you. I know you are everywhere and doing all these amazing things, which is incredible, and definitely very inspiring. So I'm so grateful to have shared this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm grateful for you too.
Thank you. Feeling all the grateful vibes.
Yes, the gratitude just flowing.
Amazing. So guys, if you want to see more, make sure you subscribe, leave a review, but then also connect on our channels. If you've got any questions, make sure you reach out to me. Simone's there as well on Instagram as well to reach out. And if you've loved this and anything in here has triggered you or inspired you or something, a massive point of value, make sure you share this with people as well, because there was some really good points on so many different things. It'll all be in the show notes. But share it with people. That's how we share the wisdom and get this viral and out there, so that everyone else can benefit from this conversation and this value.
Yeah, that's how we can empower everyone to know that there's different choice available.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. And
you're welcome. Thank you.
Enjoy Melbourne. And until next time, see everyone.
Bye-bye.
Peace.